Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives, and today we're going to be continuing our discussion on the Spider-Geddon miniseries as we take a look at Spider-Geddon number 4. So, last time on Spider-Geddon. So, with the Inheritors' return, the Spider Army wound up getting split down the middle, with one side advocating for trying to just defeat the Inheritors like they did before, while the other side advocates for putting them down. Leading one side, we have Miles Morales, and on the other side, we have Otto Octavius. As such, since nobody really knows which solution will yield the best results, everyone was given dimensional watches and was told to go on their merry way and build their armies, which ultimately both sides did, as Miles and Otto wound up gathering spider people from various universes that they believed were either like-minded or at least could be convinced to follow their means. As such, both sides began strategizing on how to best take down the Inheritors, but ultimately Miles' side wanted to just go in guns blazing, as they wound up trying to attack the New U facility that the Inheritors took over in an attempt to blow it up and hopefully stagnate their efforts to create new clone bodies for themselves. Which, speaking of that, the Inheritors have already begun recreating their father's body. The only problem is they lack the crystal containing its essence, and thus they sent Verna off to go to Earth. They sent Verna off to Earth 3145 to hopefully get it, though thankfully Otto is also gotten countermeasures in place as he sent a team of spiders there to try and stop it, which is explored in the tie-in. But either way, the Inheritors become aware of Miles and his team as they try to attack New U, and thus the Inheritors manage to attack them and almost stop their efforts. But thankfully, Otto, who Miles had told about this, ends up coming in, and as he and his team go in and save Miles and the Spideys with him. With Otto and Ben Riley going to the New U tech, bricking it while also trying to get scans on Solus's body. Sadly, their efforts don't really yield much fruit as they have to abandon ship 2. But from the attack, the Spider teams do manage to gain some kind of intel that they do begin sharing with each other. However, as all the Spideys managed to retreat back to Leopardon, which Otto and his team were utilizing as a home base, one of the Spideys on Norman's side, namely Spider Norman, ends up pulling aside another one of the Spideys in the army, a version of Spider-Man who's literally a hive mind of spiders called Spiders Man, and tells them that he may have an idea of means of stopping the Inheritors, potentially essentially giving up Earth 616 as a sacrificial lamb, cutting it off from the rest of the multiverse, and letting the Inheritors ravage it, while also saving the other multiverse. And while Spiders-Man does think this is a little bit of a risque move, he also isn't entirely against it either, and so Norman kind of decides to have that be a plan B, while also informing Spider-Man to probably not mention this conversation to anybody else. And so that's where today's issue begins. As well, going back to the tie-ins, we end up seeing kind of a follow-up to that, because to kind of give an example, like I mentioned last issue, one of the tie-ins focused on Otto sending a team of Spideys to Earth 3145 to get the Soulless Crystal. And among those Spideys there was Kane Parker, who acted as the team leader, Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman, Ashley Barton, and a new Spider person by the name of Spider Kid, who we'll talk about when we get to that particular tie-in miniseries. But put simply, they wound up going to Earth 3145, and well, sadly, if the beginning of this issue is anything to go by, things did not go well, as the only survivor of that whole thing is Jessica Drew, who immediately arrives back on Earth 616 wearing a hazmat suit and holding the Soulless Crystal. At first, she starts kind of regaining her bearings as she realizes she's back in the main Marvel Universe, but immediately when she realizes she's holding the Soulless Crystal, she kind of freaks out. And unfortunately, things kind of continue going downhill, as it turns out the part of the Marvel Universe that she teleported to was right in the middle of the New U facility, where the Inheritors are, with Genix immediately grabbing her by the neck and taking the crystal. As such, the Inheritors are now pleased that they have the Soulless Crystal back, though sadly it looks like they lost Verna in the process, though I don't think they really care that much because, hey, they're building new clone bodies. They can get her back. But either way, yeah, they got what they wanted, so they decide, well, we'll just eat this spider totem then. As such, Genix throws Spider-Woman to Deimos, but unfortunately, Deimos can't stomach Jessica Drew, as when he tries siphoning out her life force, it has a bit of a kick to it. Remember how I mentioned how Peter was able to stop Moreland from feasting on his life force the first time they fought by and just by kind of upping the radiation levels in his body so that it was more toxic to Moreland for a bit. Well, it turns out apparently Jessica Drew has that 24/7. She got her apparently, as she mentioned, she got her powers from a radioactive blast, so she's constantly irradiated. It doesn't hurt her, and it doesn't really do anything to her, and it doesn't really do anything bad to her because, well, she's a mother now, so she clearly clearly it didn't leave her somewhat infertile. But either way, yeah, she's fine. She's completely fine, and if any of the inheritors try to feast on her, essentially they get the same kickback that Moreland got when he tried to feast on Peter. However, rather than the inheritors deciding to just straight up kill her as a nuisance, Genix thinks, well, if you're doused with radiation that doesn't hurt you, maybe you could be invaluable. And so he has Jessica put in stasis so that he can potentially experiment on her later and figure out basically the genetic trick that makes her immune to the radiation. Because hey, if the inheritors can emulate that into their new clone bodies, then they can be rid of one of their greatest weaknesses. For now, though, it's time for Solus to make a comeback. As Genix immediately takes the Solus crystal, inputs it into the machine where their father's body is, and yep, Solus's consciousness is uploaded right into him, and he wakes back up, just as strong and invigorating as ever, thanking his children for bringing him back, and telling them that their reward will be conquering this world, making it their new home base, and having a feast of vengeance that will rival any other in the multiverse. So yeah, this is bad. Very, very bad. In the meantime, back with the Spider Army, they decided that they need to find that the Spider Army begins kind of experimenting with means to try and potentially take down the Inheritors. And one of the first first ways they do that is by essentially trying to look back at past defeats. As a good chunk of the Spider Army ends up going to Earth 13, which, if you remember from Spider-Verse, was the original home base for the Spider Army, since that world was supposed to be safe, since the Captain Universe powers basically eclipsed that of the Inheritor's own abilities. At least until Solus killed Cosmic Spider-Man. But basically, it turns out that the denizens of this universe actually are honoring that fall. As it turns out that after what happened with the Inheritors after what happened with Cosmic Spider-Man and the battle with all those different spider people, the inhabitants of this version of New York essentially decided to keep this place the way it is. I mean, they cleaned up the dead bodies, so to speak, because you don't want to just leave them all lying around rotting, but all the battle damage and so forth from when the Inheritors attacked the safe zone before is left intact. And among it all, there's a statue of Cosmic Spider-Man built. In a way, I like it. It's kind of nice. It's actually it's nice to kind of look back on that sort of thing and showcase that, yeah, he may have fallen, but ultimately he was a hero, which I dig it. I like it when the good guys are actually honored for what they've done. However, there's still the question of why are they here at all? Why did they come back to this place? Well, that's because they want to find the Captain Universe powers. After all, the Captain Universe, as I just said, the Captain Universe abilities, aka the Enigma Force, basically eclipses that of the Inheritors. And yes, while Solus was able to kill Cosmic Spider-Man before, they believe that if they can find a way to utilize those powers again, they might be able to stand a chance against the Inheritors. Especially since if they take what they learned from this universe, they might be able to more effectively use them again in battle without, Solus siphoning the life force out of whomever utilizes them. Of course, Spider-Norman thinks this is all stupid. Like, why do they do that? Why try and go back out and why even try positing on that? They should be looking to the future. They need to get more bodies to throw out the Inheritors because they need cannon fodder to try and take them down. Which, yeah, that's kind of the language that Norman uses. He's basically continually advocating for just gathering more Spider people that they can just throw at the Inheritors to make sure that to try and essentially hold them off while the other people go in and just kind of clean up after them. Essentially, wear the Inheritors down with more bodies until eventually they can just off them. Which Otto's actually not for. Yeah, to show an example of Otto not being a complete and utter douchebag anymore, he thinks that Norman's plan is stupid, as he is a firm believer that they can't just sacrifice indiscriminately right now. He believes everybody is indispensable, and ultimately he doesn't want any of the Spider people to die. And even he admits that his patience also has some limits. So it's kind of a subtle way of telling Norman to just shut the hell up. However, but either way, yeah, they're basically either way. Yeah, the Spider Army is just trying to gather whatever intel, whatever data they can from here to try and potentially map out the Enigma Force, so they could potentially track down Captain Universe in the main Marvel universe. So yeah, that's how everything is going. In the meantime, we also get some good character stuff here with Insomniac Spider-Man, as he actually, as with everyone just kind of waiting around trying to get the Enigma Force mapped out, he actually goes and talks to a few of the other assorted Spideys. Specifically, the first thing he does is meet with the Peter Parker and Mary Jane from the Renew Your Vows universe. And he's actually a little curious about them, especially since, yeah, Spinneret is clearly a Mary Jane. What I like is that the Renew Your Vows Spider-Man immediately just says, yeah, I know. Yes, I know. We're actually married. And Mary Jane just confirmed that Spider-Man is indeed her world's Peter Parker. And ultimately Renew Your Vows Spidey's like, yeah, before you ask, I don't know how we made it work. I don't know how we made it work, but we did. And if your MJ is anything like mine, don't miss out on having her in your life. It's actually really nice stuff. And what makes it even better is that after he talks with them, Insomniac Spidey goes to talk to Miles, because as I mentioned, there is a Miles Morales in the Insomniac universe. Again, of course, he has an entire game dedicated to him as the main character. But at this point in time, Miles was not Spider-Man yet. So basically, when Peter looks at the main universe Miles, he sees what his Miles could be. As the main universe Miles is a lot more competent, a lot more having it more together, a lot more organized. After all, he's leading an entire army, which Miles does kind of like, but even he admits that he feels like this is a bit overwhelming. Hold on one second. Sorry, confirming plot points. But yeah, even Miles admits that this is a bit overwhelming, and he even the thing is, this whole Captain Universe escapade was his idea. So he's beginning to wonder if maybe this is a dead end, since they might not even be able to find Captain Universe. But Peter lets him. But once again, Peter assures him, "Hey, you're out here doing these things, making these hard choices. That sounds like a good leader to me." Which, again, I like. Again, going off of the whole alternate universe thing, when you meet another version of a person who kind of seems to be a bit different, it can be kind of humbling. And to see Insomniac Spider-Man looking at Miles and going, wow, you're actually Miles? I actually kind of find that interesting, as it's, again, a preview of what his Miles could become. If given enough time and effort and tutelage, his Miles Morales could be just like this guy one day. And seeing this Miles leading an entire army, even despite his insecurities, Insomniac Spider-Man likes that. And even when those insecurities do pop up, he gives him a nice word, which is, again, it's good. It's nice because again showcases kind of the friendship that these two have even across realities. When Insomniac Spider-Man sees this version of Miles and sees that he's struggling, he's like, oh well, no. It's like, hey, don't let those bad thoughts get through to you. You're doing a good job, man. Just keep at it. I like that. It's nice. However, ultimately, this little meet and greet is cut short as the Spider Army is called back to Earth 616. As such, they all immediately go back, and Octavia reveals the whole Solus has come back thing, as the Spider Army did leave a Spider-Bot to spy on everything, and yeah, they see that Solus has come back, and smash the Spider-Bot. As such, immediately, the Spider Army is wants to try and think of a strategy, because after all, with Solus back, shit's gonna get real. He is the most powerful of the Inheritors, and it took the equivalent of the other to take him down last time, who was a very special spider totem whose abilities allowed him to genuinely hurt the Inheritors. And sadly, they don't have the other right now. So unfortunately, they don't really know what to do. As such, while Otto thinks that maybe they need to kind of pull back a little, while Otto is just kind of struggling to figure out what to do, Norman once again decides to he decides to essentially just be an asshole, as he tries advocating for, once again, gathering more people and leading a direct assault. Just throw as many spider people as they can at the Inheritors to wear them down, and then eventually go in for the kill, so to speak. But of course, and he even says, well, Kane was able to take him out like this. Maybe we could get enough blunt force trauma and take it down. But Miles once again points out, look, we can't do that. Kane was the other last time, and he's not the other now. We can't. So even if we did try that plan, it wouldn't work. But Norman just hears that and thinks, "Oh my God, the Captain Universe! Like, why do you keep putting all of our hopes on all these cosmic Deus Ex Machinas and all that crap?" And basically, he just keeps yelling and talking about how they need to be more competent, that they need to be relying more on facts, and actually to look to strong leadership to get them through. Like from him or something. And this finally gets Otto to tell Norman to just shut the hell up, as he finally realizes, okay, it was a mistake bringing you here. You are just as much of an asshole in your universe as you are in mine, and I think you outstayed your welcome. In Otto's own words, he calls him a cancer on this body, obviously referring to the army, and he pretty much just tells Norman to piss off. So Norman angrily complies as he opens up a portal supposedly back to his universe, and even invites Spider-Man to come along with him because, again, he's one of the few Spideys there that he actually respects. Though before Norman steps through, Otto demands that he give him back the Dimensional Watch because he doesn't want him gallivanting across the multiverse as he is. And Norman just says, okay, fine, and throws him back the watch as he and Spider-Man go through the portal and vanish. As such, the remaining members of the Spider Army begin wondering what to do, because while Norman was an asshole, he did have a point that they needed a strategy. As such, Otto advocates for just kind of holding back and devising a countermeasure for the Inheritors, while Miles believes that they do need to gather reinforcements. While he's not advocating for just throwing bodies at the Inheritors until they fall down, he does believe that they do need to strengthen their forces somewhat and try something else, especially since when Miles and his team went in unprepared, they sadly were outnumbered. But again, this does cause a rift, as again, there comes a clash between Miles and Otto and how they want to do things, with Otto wanting to sit back and wait till they have a proper strategy, while Miles wants to just keep bolstering their forces. And as a result, it does lead to an argument between Miles and Otto, where Miles even briefly calls Otto a coward for just sitting back and doing nothing, which does piss Otto off, but Miles immediately just stops his wait, no, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that, which even Otto's confused by, but Miles finally does concede to something. Otto's kind of right. They do need to have a plan. But Miles also believes that maybe they do need to bolster their forces. So he offers a compromise. In this case, they want to get the more scientifically inclined Spider people to join up with Otto to try and devise a strategy and figure out a means of taking down the Inheritors. But Miles also says that any Spider people that are not occupied by that can help Miles kind of sift through the multiverse and find new recruits. And ultimately, Miles believes that Miles believes that that's the better way to actually get through all this, and ultimately he says that if both sides want to beat the Inheritors, then they're going to need to step out of their comfort zones a little. And so Otto, after thinking it over, agrees to these terms, and so decides, fine, we'll do this together. And so he clasps Miles' hand as he says that we'll cast the die together. At which point Miles says that we'll need to work on your catchphrase, to which I say, screw you, Miles, that's a good catchphrase, but whatever, moving on. As such, from there, both sets of teams do begin working on their own strategies, with Miles and other Spideys looking through the multiverse and trying to gather as many as they can, while Otto and the other scientifically inclined Spideys continue trying to work out a strategy. Eventually, Miles and his crew believe they found some sufficient recruits, so they end up getting Pravitra Prabhakar to try and go out and gather them. But unfortunately, before he gets a chance, all their watches immediately overload and short out. Why? Well, let's go back to Spider-Norman. It turns out that when he opened a portal, it wasn't back to his universe. Instead, Norman opened a portal to Loom World, because after all, thanks to the cosmic cube he had, he knows of Loom World's existence and of the Great Web, like he said last issue. And sadly, Loom World has seen better days as the place is still in disarray and shows clear signs of a battle, which of course is from Karn and Verna when they duked it out. And sadly, lying on the floor is Karn's body, which Spider-Man immediately begins to eat. Classy. But either way, Norman's not here for Karn. No, he's here for the Great Web. After all, he does still want to stop the Inheritors. But the thing is, he thinks it's time to go for the nuclear option, as he immediately goes up to the web and just cuts off a strand. As even Spider-Man admits, oh, okay, if we can use the web to travel the multiverse, we don't need their watches, right? which Norman admits, but there's still the matter of but there's still the matter of the inheritors. After all, like he said, if they win, they'll just continue conquering universes. And after all, there are plenty of dimensional watches still out there. The inheritors could just steal one of them and jump to another universe. So what happens if the web just suddenly immediately vanishes? And so after finding a certain strand of the web, Norman reaches inside, presumably to his universe, and pulls out a bomb. Yep. He's going to blow the place up. Although like I said, he does keep a strand of the web for himself. As such, after pulling out the bomb, he immediately sets the charge around the Great Chamber, and yeah, he's planning to just blow the web up to essentially cut off all dimensional travel and trap the inheritors on Earth 616. Although before he does that, he does open a portal back to his universe, even asking Spider-Man, hey, are you going to go back to your universe? But Spider-Man decides, hey, if you want to do this team-up thing again, I can find another way, as he immediately starts spreading his spiders out across infinite worlds. So that basically, if Norman wants his help again, all he needs to do is call him, and Spider-Man will be right there, since, again, hive mind of spiders. So, yeah, they immediately part ways, and Norman pats himself on the back for being the savior of infinite worlds. Well, savior -1. And so, before he fully steps through, he flips a switch that he had on standby, and the Great Chamber, as well as the Web of Life and Destiny, are destroyed. And yeah, that was what caused the feedback. I'll get more into my thoughts on this when we finish the plot summary, but yeah, basically at this moment, all dimensional travel is now cut off. And so all the spiders in the multiverse are now, all the spiders that took part in the whole Spider-Geddon event, or more specifically the members of the Spider Army, are now trapped on Earth 616 alongside the Inheritors, as any means that they can find of accessing other universes, from traveling to just viewing, are now cut off, as they lost the feed for all the recruits they were hoping to gather, and their watches now don't work at all. As such, the spiders immediately begin putting the pieces together and start figuring out, yeah, they managed to go... Sorry, something coming up. Yeah, the Spideys are able to put 2 and 2 together and realize that if the watches are shorted out, something must have happened to the Great Web, and you have to remember here, none of them know that Karn is dead. None of them were aware of what happened between him and Verna. So they realize that if something has happened to their watches, then something has most likely happened to Karn, and that is not something that sits right with anybody. On top of that, and basically utilizing whatever clues they have, basically all the Spideys, especially Otto, are able to determine that this was done intentionally, with Otto realizing that this was Norman's doing, as from a certain sick, cold logic point of view, cutting off this world from the rest of the multiverse, it's a solid plan. Sacrifice one world for the betterment of others. Of course, Otto did not want to do this plan because he's still dooming an entire world, but yeah, he quickly realizes Norman's the ones that's responsible for this, and even is angry that bringing Norman about. Yeah, and he's angry that Norman was brought on at all. Which, yeah, I'd be a little angry at that too. As such, the assorted Spideys begin trying to think of ways of countering this, because after all, they still are assorted. They can still think of a plan, and maybe they can find a workaround for this. Maybe still find a way to gather more recruits. They still have some of the most intelligent minds in the multiverse here. They can still do this, and after all, they have the superior Spider-Man. Although when Miles goes to talk to him, he's seemingly vanished. Alongside Ben Reilly. Where did they go? It turns out they are heading straight to the New U facility. As it turns out that Otto and Ben kind of sort of had a backup plan in the works. One that they have decided to not share with the remainder of the Spider Army, because Otto admits that if they learned about it, they would want to accompany them and try to stop whatever their plan is. As such, the pair arrive at the facility, and it turns out that, yeah, the Inheritors have actually been... While the attack was bricked in the last issue, the Inheritors have essentially cobbled together whatever they could, and after mixing together some of Genix's tech, they managed to recreate the cloning vats, though sadly they're still having problems with them, as even Genix admitted that the technology is still a little alien to him. So everything's still not up and running yet, so Otto admits that if they kill the Inheritors now, they'll still be able to stop... Then they won't be able to come back. Although, as both Spideys immediately situate themselves, Otto does ask Ben if he's okay with this plan. As after all, he was still a Jackal, and he's still a little cautious of him, but Ben assures him that he is still trying to do things right. That, yeah, he may still be messed up in the head, but he's trying to do things right. And while he says he's been doing okay, even though I know that that's bullcrap, he does think that doing this will help will make up for things. So he says that he's ready to do his part of this mission, and he's ready to do it the best way he can. And Otto says, "Okay, sure. Then I gotta do what I can on my end." At which point he pulls out his robotic spider arms and smacks Ben upside the head, knocking him out. As such, Otto picks up Ben's body and calls out to the Inheritors, who immediately arrive on the scene. Yeah, it turns out prior to coming here, Otto wound up calling the Inheritors and made a deal. He would give Ben Reilly to them, and in return, they would spare the main Marvel Universe. As Otto says with his genius, he could find other means of traversing the multiverse. As such, the Inheritors agreed to these terms because, well, like I said, Genix is still having problems with the cloning tech, but if he's able to siphon the life force out of Ben, who created the cloning tech, then he might be able to gain the knowledge to make it all properly work. I'm gonna still call question to this because Genix did perfect the cloning technology before, so I don't understand why he can do this now. But whatever. Maybe it's different. Maybe it's a different process this time around. Point is, they need Ben. They need Ben, and so Otto brought him here, and basically they set Ben out for the Inheritors to feast on. Though Otto says he wants to step aside because he doesn't want to see them feast on another Spidey. In the meantime, though, back with the remainder of the Spider Army as they still continue trying to find alternate solutions, it turns out they finally got something. You see, while their trip to Earth-13 may not have allowed them to find the Enigma Force, they were able to gather enough information about it to send a message to hopefully this universe's equivalent of the Enigma Force, and they seem to have gotten a message back. Or at the very least, they got the Enigma Force itself, that immediately arrives in their cockpit and immediately demands to know who the hell has summoned it. And yeah, that's where the issue ends, so. Okay, so what are my thoughts on this issue? It's alright. This issue is alright. I say it's alright because we do get some genuinely good plot developments here. For one thing, I like that we get to see more character-focused stuff. Like in the previous Spider-Verse, there isn't too much character stuff around, which I'll get to when I get to my thoughts on the full miniseries, but again, one of the things that I like when you have a story that includes multiple versions of the same character meeting up is when they compare notes. And one of the things that I like here, we get that with the Insomniac Spider-Man when the team goes to visit Earth-13. It's a small moment, but I like that when he goes around and goes to meet with the Spider people from the Renew Your Vows universe and the main Marvel universe, because in a way he sees essentially what ifs, and these are positive what ifs. In the case of the Renew Your Vows Spideys, he sees a version of himself who actually managed to make it work with Mary Jane, so much so that they are a duo of ass-kicking superheroes together, and they're happy. And it's actually pretty interesting because, again, going off of what we saw of Peter and MJ in the Insomniac universe, their relationship was rocky, to say the least, as prior to the events of the game, they did end up having a messy breakup due to Peter wanting to keep MJ at arm's length when it came to all of his spider duties, and then by the time the game started up, they were starting to get back together, though still had some issues, though by the end of the game, they did manage to kind of resolve those. So, to see a world where he and MJ did continue making it work and are so worked so far that they were actually able to become happily married, it's nice, and I like that. I like seeing that. I just kind of like seeing him ask about that as he realizes just that his relationship with Mary Jane is such a constant, which, in a way, he did get confirmed in Spider-Geddon number 0, as when Insomniac Spidey went to go say goodbye to his Mary Jane, Otto did tell him how his relationship with MJ was repeated across the multiverse, and that for many other Peters, it was a source of strength. So, I do dig that. I like that. And then on top of that, when Insomniac Spider-Man sees Miles, like I said, he essentially sees what his Miles Morales could become. That essentially, as enough time can pass, he essentially sees Sorry, I'm getting losing my train of thought here. Let me put it this way. In his universe, Miles Morales is still a fresh-faced spider person. From his perspective, he just got his superpowers and is now currently running around and still trying to figure out how to use them. Hell, at the point in time that this story takes place, Miles hasn't even officially made his own costume yet. He's still in training. So for Peter to see a version of Miles who actually went on to become a spider person and has become so competent at it that he now is leading an entire team, he's impressed. And he likes seeing that, as it essentially could be, as he looks at that and sees what his Miles could become, and he couldn't be more proud of it. Even when the main universe Miles starts doubting himself and wondering, is this all worth it? Am I even doing a good job with these guys? Insomniac Spidey just assures him, no, hey, you're leading an entire team, and you're doing it well. I think you have to be really good at what you do if you're able to do that. Which, I like that. It's a nice little moment, which helps showcase that, yeah, while this may not be the version of Miles he knows, he's still Miles, and Miles is his friend. I like that. It's just a nice little sweet moment that shows that connection. I always like stuff like that in the multiverse. While you do have to remember that not every version of a person is gonna be like the version you know, which you have to kind of keep in mind when some are so radically different. In the very least, when you see a version that has so much in common with a person you know, you can still make that connection. Even if it is a one-sided connection, it can sometimes be very beneficial. Again, it doesn't always work that way because, like I said, one of the things that you got to keep in mind with the multiverse is that despite there being an infinite number of everything, there's also only one of everything. And so even if there's like infinite versions of me doing infinite versions of this vlog, I'm the only one that's doing this specific version of the vlog. Maybe there's a version of me who hates this connection and just wants to see the Spideys duke it out and thinks, oh, this is stupid. When are we going to get back to the action? Like, that version is not this version. The version you are watching right now is not that guy. And so you got to remember that while me and that other guy may have some things in common, we are not the same person. We may look the same. We may even be the same. In many ways, we may even be the same, but I am not him, and he is not me. So it's a weird thing. But you have to remember that sometimes when you do meet a version of someone you know, it is kind of nice to just kind of see the paths that life can take them and where they could go under the right circumstances, which in a way can give you hope. I like that. And then when we see that showcase with Insomniac Spider-Man as he interacts with both the Renew Your Vows Spideys and the main universe Miles Morales. It's good. I dig it. On top of that, in terms of plot developments, I do like that we see the Spider Army essentially trying to try and further work together. I'm gonna say this right now. It is weird to see them so easily working together like this, because part of the things that I think kind of could have made Spider-Geddon work was the split in the army. Which, while I complimented last week that they weren't trying to get in each other's way because they're both working towards the same goal. See, the way that mindset combined with what we're seeing in this issue kind of makes you wonder why they were split up in the first place. It feels rather pointless if I can say that. It feels like that was inserted in there to create false drama, which in a way also makes that whole conflict feel like it was nothing. Like it was just there to have a maybe tertiary conflict or whatever, or maybe to add character development to Otto, as we'll see later. But in a way, it just doesn't really feel necessary. It feels tacked on, so to speak. So I guess I'll consider that a flaw. But with that being said, I do like that when we as a first act of seeing the two armies working together, they are trying to reflect on past mistakes. As while the whole Captain Universe excursion was Miles' idea, Otto is willing to go along with it because he does believe that maybe having the power of the Enigma Force on their side might be beneficial. So I do think I do like that. On top of that, in terms of development for the army, we see more tension rising between the superior Spider-Man and Spider-Norman. As you gotta remember, both of these two are Spider-fied versions of two of Spider-Man's greatest enemies, and both are known to have egos the size of Kansas, especially with Spider-Norman, because as I hopefully showcased when I talked about Edge of Spider-Geddon number 4, he may be Spider-Man instead of the Green Goblin, but Norman Osborn is still Norman Osborn. And despite the identity being different from what we know of him, He's still the same guy. He's still just as crazy. He's still just as nuts. He's still just as egomaniacal. He's still just as psychotic. And so while he may bear the spider mantle in his universe, he is still kind of nuts. And so seeing him and Otto constantly butt heads because not just of their egos, but differing levels of morality, I kind of find that interesting, and it really does kind of leave you on edge a little, especially when it finally comes to a head, when Otto finally just has enough of Norman's shit and tells him to get the hell out. Which, again, in a way that also doubles as giving us good character development for Otto, because in another life, Otto might have been siding with Norman on this, that he thinks maybe we should just cut this universe off and let it die. But in this case, we see Otto arguing against what Norman says. Norman advocates for bringing in more Spideys that uses cannon fodder, and Otto counters and says, no, we're not just going to needlessly kill people. That's stupid. And then likewise, when Norman continues advocating for letting him be in charge, Otto just thinks, shut up, shut up, I am tired of your shit. And then even in the end, when Norman does go through with his plan of sequestering off the multiverse to trap the inheritors on the main Marvel universe, Otto quickly realizes, oh fuck, we screwed up, and Norman did it. I like that. It's good character development. Although that character development might be a little shot in the foot by the end, but we'll see if that really is the case when we look at next issue. So I do dig that. I like that clash, and the whole thing with Spider-Norman, it definitely makes him feel intimidating. And in a way, it makes him feel like a secondary antagonist with him doing all this behind the Spider Army's back, which, again, I'll get to my thoughts on that later, but for now, let's just keep going with what I actually liked. But again, kind of going off of more of that character development, while I did find it still pointless to split the Spider Army up, one of the benefits that does come from it is that it does give Otto Octavius more character development in that regard, as he and Miles have to come to a compromise. As Miles decides to kind of give Otto a bit more leniency, and likewise says, Look, I get it, I understand what you're going through, but I do have my own plan here, so why don't we try finding a middle ground here? You get the more scientifically inclined members of our team to try and work out a strategy to take down the Inheritors, while any Spideys that you don't need, help me try and find new recruits for the army, because we're going to need the strength right now. I like that. It's a nice way of kind of breaking down barriers, and the fact that Otto does listen to it and thinks, actually, I think that's a good idea. Again, showcases more of his development as a good person, as he's trying to be a hero, as he actually does listen to Miles, and even comments him and says, you're kind of wise beyond your years, kid. I like that. It's legitimately nice. So, and ultimately, with how it continues going on, and how it ultimately continues on as both sides kind of find an equilibrium with each other, I dig it. It's nice. And again, we do get some more character stuff with the Enigma Force, which does come back into play. When the final shot of the comic was having Otto seemingly just sacrifice everyone else for the sake of stopping the Inheritors, as he turns Ben over to them, definitely a way of grabbing your attention. So I do dig that. With that said, what do I not like about this issue? So I've mentioned before how Spider-Geddon seems to kind of have some inconsistent plot points between it and Spider-Verse. Well, we got another one here. There's another lesser one we kind of saw earlier as Miles recounts what happened to Cosmic Spider-Man in Spider-Verse, which I'll get more into that when I talk about issue 5, because he does apparently mention something more specific about it. But the bigger issue, in my opinion, is the Web of Life and Destiny. So, as we established in Spider-Verse, the Web of Life and Destiny is not just a means of traveling between parallel universes. It is meant to be the very foundation of the multiverse. As they said in one of the previous issues, it is a fourth-dimensional structure existing in a three-dimensional environment. The Web of Life and Destiny is meant to quite literally be the multiverse condensed into a three-dimensional form that our minds can comprehend and interact with. To do something to the web is to do something to the multiverse, and as such, the Great Web's upkeep is important. As long as the web stays intact and continues operating at peak efficiency, then the multiverse will continue operating at peak efficiency. And if you know how to manipulate the web, you can change things in the multiverse. We've seen that in previous stories. When the Inheritors first attacked the Master Weaver centuries prior to Spider-Verse, the Master Weaver was able to snip a few strips of the web here and there to try and falter them, which was because snipping those strands was causing his home to start literally unweaving. He destroyed a pillar. He caved in his floor. He even unwove the mother of the Inheritors just to keep himself safe. And then likewise, as the story can, and likewise, they show as we saw in other stories, the Web of Life and Destiny is very much intrinsically connected to reality. Because after all, part of the Inheritors' big plan in Spider-Verse was to gather the Other, the Bride, and the Scions, spill their blood on the web, and through them perform a ritual that would stop any and all future spider totems from coming into existence, allowing the Inheritors to cull the remaining ones and effectively gain total dominion over reality. Ultimately it was stated in the story that in order for this to happen, they kind of needed the Master Weaver to stay there and maintain the upkeep. And thus, when Otto killed the original Master Weaver, it kind of it made things worse. And the fact that, and when Otto even went back to the Web of Life and Destiny and started snipping it, it was supposed to imply that what he was doing was very bad, because this thing was meant to be the literal foundation for all reality. And we saw that could be that when we saw the ramifications of messing with it and how it could affect the multiverse. In the Spider-Verse tie-ins to Secret Wars, when Norman brought up a digital representation of the Web of Life and Destiny, it was in tatters. Still technically there, but now just a mess. Everything was dismembered and dislodged, which makes sense, because part of this plot with Secret Wars was that the multiverse was destroyed, and what was left of the multiverse, Battle World, was just stitched together bits and pieces of what once was, and just put together into one whole planet. So in a way, the Web of Life and Destiny would still exist. It's just that it wouldn't be what it was before. And then likewise, when the multiverse was restored, the web was restored as well. But we still saw that the web could still affect the destinies of other people in the multiverse. Because after all, as we saw in Web Warriors, when the strands of the Web of Life and Destiny began getting intertangled with one another, it started causing realities to bleed over into each other. And as portions of the Spider-Goblin's world wound up getting mixed with the Marvel Noir universe, and the world of Spider-Ham 2099 began kind of crossing over with Hobie Brown's world, and then likewise the Megamorphs universe continued mixing in, and then when they tried untangling that bit of the web, it caused a reality quake that sent the Web Warriors across the multiverse. And on top of that, even as a consequence of that, some worlds were just all around lost because their respective strands were lost in a tangle of other strands. So, when the Spider Goblin started trying to tear the web down, it started causing reality to go belly up, and they had to stop him. What I'm getting at is this. In previous stories, the Web of Life and Destiny has been shown to be a much grander artifact than just a dimensional jumper. It is quite literally the very foundation of reality. It is meant to be the building blocks. That to mess with it is to mess with the multiverse. And if anything bad happens to it, that same damage will be reflected across realities. If strands of the web get connected, the worlds that they correspond with will become interconnected. If something happens to the web, it can cause damage across reality. If reality itself gets destroyed, then the web itself will also be in tatters, because they are both literally the same thing. So, here's my question. Why isn't the multiverse going belly up right now? That's the thing. And this is one of the things that genuinely kind of annoys me with Spider-Geddon. It kind of seems to misunderstand what certain plot points from Spider-Verse really freaking meant. One of those important things is how the web works. The Web of Life and Destiny is meant to be this extraordinarily powerful thing that represents the entirety of existence. Yet this story sees it as nothing more than just this super mystical dimensional transporter or whatever. That ultimately, we don't need this thing for reality to exist. No. We could just cut a strand off and nothing bad would happen, which is what happens with Spider-Norman as he cuts off a strand of the Web of Life and Destiny and takes it with him when he goes back to his universe. But nothing bad happens when he does that. No other universes are cut off because of that. No other worlds are suddenly destroyed because he lost that strand of the web. It's just, he cut the strand of the web off. No big deal. It isn't until he destroys the web that something serious happens. And you want to know what that serious thing is? He just stops dimensional travel from being possible. That's it. That's the extent of what destroying the Web of Life and Destiny does, which I think is stupid. The Web of Life and Destiny is supposed to be this. Again, I'm sorry I keep restating this point, but the Web of Life and Destiny is the very foundation of the multiverse. It is it's the literal glue that holds everything together. And so to destroy it should cause all of reality to go belly up. We should be looking at like Secret Wars 3 or 4, whatever the numbering is. We should be seeing the multiverse being destroyed again. And yet, despite the fact that the Web of Life and Destiny is completely annihilated, everything is fine. The multiverse is fine. It's just that you can't jump between universes anymore. Sucks to be you guys, I guess. So I don't understand that. It doesn't make sense. And it's very inconsistent with what we saw in the previous Spider-Verse books. And it ties back into what we saw in Spider-Geddon number 2 when Verna just casually killed Karn, which again should have bigger ramifications, because after all, Karn is supposed to be the Master Weaver. He is the guy that makes sure the glue of the multiverse stays dry, makes sure that everything is held together properly. He's an integral part of the web's design, and to take him out of the design is a bad call. Like I said in Spider-Verse, when Otto killed the original Master Weaver, Morlun was fucking horrified. And in the Web Warriors books, Karn was still a necessary piece of making the Great Web function. That's why the Electroverse army wanted to have Karn back, because they needed him to make the Great Web work. They needed him for that. And it was ultimately Karn who had to keeping the web in place. So I think ultimately he was still an integral part. It's part of the reason why the Inheritors didn't kill the original Master Weaver and instead kept him hostage, because they needed him in order to make the web work. So, and then here we have Spider-Geddon, who just seems to think the Great Web is no big deal. It's just a mystical dimensional teleporter. That this allows the universes to interconnect and cross over with one another. No! That's not how this works. It's literally just the foundation. Manipulating the web is what allows dimensional travel. It's not utilizing the web. It's not the web allows people to jump across universes. It's that you can use the web to jump across universes. If you use it the right way. That's why the dimensional watches allow dimensional travel, because they're connected to the web. And by manipulating the watches, you can alter what strands you can jump to and how you go about it. So that's why they're important. And likewise, like I said, manipulating the web can allow worlds to cross over with one another. And if done improperly, it can cause those worlds to bleed with one another. So they are essentially meant. So like I said, this is still meant to be an integral part of the multiverse. And yet this story comes around and just says, oh, it's no big deal. It's just a mystical web. We can get another one, right? So, no. I find this to be a problem. It's a very big plot hole that really does not make sense when you stop and think about it. But with Spider-Norman destroying the web, the multiverse should be destroyed. There should be nothing left. No Earth 616, no main Marvel Universe, no anything. The multiverse should be gone now. And yet this story just says, no, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. You just can't jump between universes anymore. Which I don't like. It's dumb, and it really feels inconsistent. Yes, the shot of Spider-Norman just casually blowing it up and trapping everyone on Earth 616 does feel like a big plot point. One that I feel could be explored better, but ultimately it still feels like ultimately it rests on just on us misunderstanding how the web is supposed to work. And the thing is, the plot point of him cutting off a strand of the web, it comes back later. We got it. We have that plot point is revisited in the follow up to Spider-Geddon and in one of the future storylines we will be looking at. So it is still an integral part. The problem is, however, that in order for us to accept how it works, we have to ignore everything we've learned about the Great Web, which just makes me believe that when this story was written, the writer did not fully understand how certain plot elements from the original Spider-Verse played out. And so when when this story was wrote, he kind of went forward what his own interpretations were, and sadly, those interpretations are wrong. No offense to Christos Gage if you're watching this, my man. I want him to say this right now. I don't hate you. I do still like Spider-Geddon. I do genuinely do. It's just that there are certain plot points that I think it's just that there are some things that I don't like about it. Apologies that I get so passionate about it. I really shouldn't be doing that. This is just a comic book. I really shouldn't be going on my rocker because of it. My point is this. It feels it's very inconsistent with what we saw in the original Spider-Verse, and in order for us to accept this plot point, it requires us to forget everything we learned about the Web of Life and Destiny in the previous story. So, yes, I'm gonna consider that a problem in this book. So, yeah, I'll do that. Otherwise, though, do I hate the issue? No. Like I said, it's still alright. It is still somewhat enjoyable. Oh yeah, there's also the inconsistencies with Ben Reilly. That's still annoying, so to speak. But again, on the whole, the issue itself is still alright. There's still plenty of enjoyable moments. I like seeing the Spider Army still taking steps to try and find ways to counter the Inheritors. I like the little character moments we get with Insomniac Spider-Man meeting with the other Spider people of other worlds. I like seeing the tension rise with Solus returning. I like seeing Miles and Otto come together and form a compromise. And then likewise, the ending does feel like a big twist, especially considering how far Otto's come, and with the addition of the Enigma Force thrown in, you know that things are going to get serious, and does make you wonder how things are going to get wrapped up here. So, yes, while I still have some major issues with this particular issue, on the whole, I still enjoy it. It's not great, but it's alright. So, yeah, I think that's about it. I hope you enjoyed me going on my rant there. It was gotta raise my voice a little there. My voice box is a little hurt right now, so I'm gonna let my vocal cords get some rest. And in the meantime, I gotta go get breakfast. So I hope you enjoy this Saturday, and I hope you tune in on Tuesday as we look at the final issue of Spider-Geddon and see exactly how the Spider Army manages to finally take down the Inheritors. So, till then, I hope you have a good day, and as always, take care.